These are volatile times, dangerous times. War has already broken out in Eastern Europe. If the crisis is not handled with prudence and resolve and restraint and foresight, the conflict could well spread across the globe, sending us barreling headfirst into another world war. This is a time for competent, assured, intelligent leadership. It's unfortunate, then, that the Western world is led by the most pathetic collection of morally bankrupt half-wits our civilization has ever seen. These are the people we must entrust to guide us through this calamity without getting 50 million people killed in the process. Frankly, I don't love the odds right now. And I'm not feeling any better today considering what happened in D.C. last night. With the world teetering on the brink of nuclear destruction, Congress, which can never be accused of having its priorities straight, got together to work on making lynching illegal. Yes, that violent act which literally hasn't occurred one single time in this country in at least 40 years, that's the thing they decided to focus on. They might as well pass a law prohibiting the use of giant catapults to storm fortresses. Maybe next they can finally legally ban people from burning witches at the stake. How about a law once again abolishing the transatlantic slave trade? Now, I'm not being totally fair. They didn't just work on outlawing lynching. They also tried to do some other things, like they tried to pass a bill banning something called hair discrimination. That's hair discrimination. It's called the Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, or Crown Act, and it would make it illegal to discriminate against hairstyles worn by black people. Now, you might be thinking that discrimination against black people is already illegal, and it is, but this bill would make a black person's hairstyle its own protected class. So black people would be protected from discrimination twice over, once for their whole body, and then a second time for the top of their heads. Eventually, I'm sure Democrats will pass laws specifically protecting each marginalized body part individually. So we've covered head discrimination. What about shoulder discrimination? What about knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose? Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. You can tell I have a 2-year-old at home. Sorry about that. But the Dreadlock Protection Act of 2022 didn't pass. That was one bit of empty virtue signaling that Republicans refused to go along with. The same cannot be said for the Anti-Lynching Act, however, which was an even more dangerous and grotesque form of virtue signaling. But as for that, Republicans were fully on board, save for 3. There were 3 Republicans who rightfully voted against the measure, including Thomas Massie from Kentucky, who's one of the only good ones left. But they were not enough to prevent this bill from passing. And so the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act was passed with near unanimous support from both parties. And the bill now makes it a federal hate crime to lynch somebody or to conspire to lynch somebody. Now, before the bill's passage, various members of Congress took turns, standing on the floor of Congress, bravely denouncing this despicable act, which was already illegal and which doesn't happen anymore at all to anybody. Squad member Cori Bush, of course, made sure to get her time in the spotlight. Listen to her.
Those who survived the Middle Passage survived only to be brought onto these shores, bought and sold at auctions like the goods their forced labor was producing. These auctions launched a long-standing practice in America in which white folks, including white women, scrutinize and violate the bodies of black people, especially black women. We're going to tell the truth today. Black adults and black children enslaved and forced to endure being tormented, being tortured, being raped by white slave owners on slave ships and on the plantations. Our ancestors tried to escape the bondage of slavery, just to be hunted, captured, imprisoned, executed.
Executed. Why is she talking about this? Why is she talking about slavery? And why does she pretend that in denouncing slavery, she's bravely telling a truth that nobody else will say out loud? Oh, we're going to tell the truth today. Oh, how brave about slavery. Now, I was joking before about the Democrats outlawing slavery all over again. Maybe that's really where this is headed. And I guess I can see why. The Democrats were all in favor of slavery the first time around, so it's only fair to give them a chance to get on the right side of the issue. But as for the Anti-Lynching Act, 2 points must be emphasized. One, as discussed, nobody is getting lynched in modern America, thank God. The last case was in 1981, 5 years before I was born. And that was an extraordinary event because it was the first such occurrence in decades. So since my parents were born, you could count the number of lynchings on maybe like one hand, and you may not need all your fingers. Since I was born, it hasn't happened at all. Not once. Anywhere in the country. Now, does that mean that it should be legal? Well, of course not. And the good news is that it's not legal. It's always been illegal. If you lynch a person today, with or without this bill, you will go to prison for a very long time. Though ironically, with this bill, you may actually go to prison for a shorter length of time than you otherwise would have, because the legislation prescribes a sentence of not more than 30 years. Now, I would have thought that lynching should carry a life sentence or a death sentence. But, that's just me. I guess I'm tougher on lynching than the Democrats are. Does it make sense that the same company who controls half of online retail also passively eavesdrops on your private conversations at home? What about the idea that a single company controls 90% of internet searches, runs your email service, and gets to track everything you do on your smartphone? Big tech is more powerful than most countries are, and they profit by exploiting your personal data. It's time to put a layer of protection between your online activity and these tech giants, and that's why I use ExpressVPN. Think about how much of your life is on the internet. Sadly, every site you visit, video you watch, message you send, gets tracked and data mined. But when you run ExpressVPN on your device, the software hides your IP address, something big tech can use to personally identify you. So ExpressVPN makes your activity harder to trace and also harder to sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers on your network as well. So stop handing over your personal data to the big tech monopoly who mines your activity and sells your information. Protect yourself with a VPN I trust to keep me safe. Visit expressvpn.com/Matt Walsh Show to get 3 extra months free. In fact, lynching isn't just already illegal. Race-based lynching, lynchings committed for racist reasons, are illegal twice over. Okay, because lynching is murder or attempted murder, which is illegal. If it's racially motivated, then it's race-based violence, which is already a hate crime. So no black people are getting lynched in America, but if such a horrific event did occur, it would already be illegal twice. Illegal on the state and the federal level. Illegal and then illegal again. So this law makes it illegal a third time. Why stop there? Let's make it illegal 4 times. Let's make it illegal every year. By 2030, we should have over 10 laws outlawing a crime that nobody is committing anyway. By the way, this is true even if you expand the definition of lynching to include things that are not lynching, which is what the left has done. In order to make the case that lynching is still a problem in the United States, what they'll always do is they'll say, well, George Floyd was a lynching victim, or Ahmaud Arbery. But words have meanings, and those don't apply. If lynching now just means any violence committed against a black man by a white man for allegedly racist reasons, well, again, that's already illegal. The Wikipedia article on lynching in the United States actually lists Ahmaud Arbery as a victim. If you go to Wikipedia and you trust them as a source, they have a list of all the victims of lynching. And according to them, there's been 1 case of lynching in the 21st century, and Ahmaud Arbery was the victim. Except that he was not lynched. And anyway, his killers have already been convicted of murder and a hate crime. So even under the expanded definition of lynching, in fact, especially under the expanded definition, there's no need for this law. It already exists. So what is the point? I mean, why are they doing this? Well, the primary point, obviously, is to virtue signal, treating the law itself like it's some kind of Twitter hashtag. Now, all of these lawmakers can appear in campaign videos declaring that they bravely took a stand and finally, once and for all, banned this terrible practice. They'll just hope that their constituents are too stupid to realize that it was already banned, and also that they were wasting time on this empty stunt while the world stood at the precipice of nuclear annihilation. But there's something else too. And this is what makes this more than an empty stunt and more than just a silly and pointless symbolic gesture, but something far more sinister as well. This is also why spineless Republicans should have refused to go along with the charade, but they didn't refuse because they're, well, spineless. And that is this. The law is meant to send a message that lynching is still a current and urgent problem in the United States. That's what this is. It's psychological conditioning. It's kind of like, if you stand in a crowd and you look up at the sky inquisitively, everybody else will look up too. They'll assume that because you're looking up there must be something there. And so when Congress passes a law banning lynching for the third time, stupid people will assume that, okay, well, if they had to pass a law banning lynching, then I guess it still happens. So this is all part of the overarching effort to paint our country as systemically racist against minorities, which it is not. It is a narrative booster, most of all. And that's what our leaders are concerned with at a time like this. Because they're not leaders. We have no leaders in this country. Only parasites and con artists playing the part. Listen, hit that subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.